Maya settled into her seat as the enormous chamber buzzed with diplomatic chatter in at least 30 different languages. Her universal translator struggled to keep up, occasionally emitting sharp static when encountering particularly exotic phonetics. The human delegation, just 5 representatives from Earth, looked comically small compared to the grand entourages of the established species. "Quite the welcome committee," Lieutenant Kira Yoshida muttered, adjusting her collar. The strategic specialist had insisted on wearing the traditional diplomatic uniform, despite Maya's more relaxed approach. "Did you notice the Orcs brought 50 delegates? We look like the school project that forgot to prepare." Maya smiled thinly. "Quality over quantity, Lieutenant. Besides, Earth can't spare more of us right now." From their back row position, Maya had a perfect vantage point to observe the intricate dance of galactic politics. The Vesperi representatives moved in uncanny synchronization, their slender bodies swaying like wheat in a breeze as they communicated through subtle movements that their hive mind interpreted simultaneously. The crystalline Orcs refracted light through their bodies when excited, creating dazzling prismatic displays that seemed designed to impress or intimidate newcomers. "Environmental analysis complete, Captain," Dr. Warren whispered, sliding a data tablet toward her. "Oxygen levels at 22%, higher than our standard. Temperature maintained at what would be approximately 23 Celsius for us. They've accommodated our biological needs precisely." "How considerate," Maya said, but her eyes narrowed slightly, almost as if they've been studying us for some time. The Council's Grandmaster, a towering Quarian whose skin displayed the characteristic age rings of their 7th century, tapped a resonating crystal. The sound cut through all conversation, bringing immediate silence. "We officially welcome the representatives of Sol 3, known to its inhabitants as Earth," the Grandmaster announced, their multi-tone voice carrying effortlessly through the chamber. Though young by galactic standards, humans have demonstrated sufficient technological advancement to warrant observer status within the Galactic Council. Maya noted the careful wording. Observer status, not full membership. The distinction was subtle but significant. The humans will be granted standard Level 2 access to non-restricted knowledge bases and trading networks, the Grandmaster continued. Their input will be welcome during general assemblies, though voting privileges are reserved for full members. Several species exchange what Maya interpreted as the interstellar equivalent of knowing smirks. A blue-skinned Galaxian delegate leaned toward a neighbor, covering their speech apparatus in what was clearly meant to be a private aside, but Maya's enhanced auditory implant, technology the Council clearly didn't know humans possessed, picked up the comment clearly. "Another primitive species that will burn out before achieving anything meaningful. Remember the Tralaxians, gone within a century of joining." Maya maintained her diplomatic smile, showing no reaction. Under the table, she tapped a sequence on her data tablet, recording the comment for later analysis. Dr. Warren caught her eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. He'd heard it too. The proceedings continued with formal introductions of each major species. Maya watched attentively as holographic displays showcased the homeworlds and achievements of 24 advanced civilizations. She noted which species appeared genuinely curious about Earth and which dismissed them entirely. The first assembly session will commence tomorrow at local rotation mark 3.7, the Grandmaster announced. New observers are encouraged to use this time to familiarize themselves with Council protocols and facilities. As the delegates began to disperse, Maya gathered her team. "Tonight, we learn everything we can about this station, its systems, and our new neighbors. Tomorrow, we begin the real work." Dr. Warren smiled. "They have no idea what they've invited in, do they?" Maya glanced around at the departing aliens, their backs literally turned to the humans they had dismissed so easily. "No," she said quietly. "And that's exactly how we want it." Maya stepped away from the central presentation platform as polite, restrained applause rippled through the chamber. After the spectacular displays of the other species, humanity's achievements seemed almost quaint by comparison. The Archean representative nearest to her viewing pod didn't even attempt to hide their crystalline expressions of disappointment. Facets dimming in what she had already learned was their equivalent of a dismissive eye roll. "Thank you, Representative Chen, for that informative overview of human development," said High Chancellor Zix, her tentacular appendages arranging themselves in the formal pattern of diplomatic acknowledgement. "The Council recognizes Earth's remarkable progress given your limited evolutionary timeframe." Maya bowed slightly. "We are honored to share our journey and eager to learn from the collected wisdom of the Council." As she returned to her seat in the back, Lieutenant Yoshida's face remained perfectly composed, though her eyes conveyed volumes. They had rehearsed this moment extensively. Present enough to be taken seriously, but never enough to be considered a threat. I counted 17 distinct reactions of dismissal, 9 of mild interest, and 3 of genuine curiosity. Communications Officer Patel whispered, her augmented contact lenses recording and analyzing the micro-expressions of the various species. The Thraxians and Nor collective seemed most receptive. The older species barely paid attention. Maya nodded slightly. Perfect. The remaining session passed with administrative matters, trade route adjustments, minor diplomatic disputes, quarantine protocols for a newly discovered bacterial moon. Maya noted how the power dynamics played out in real time. The ancient species, Quarians, Archeans, and Vesperi, dominated discussions while mid-tier civilizations jockeyed for influence. The newest members, like humans, were expected to observe silently. Maya used every moment to absorb, analyze, and record. Hours later, safely within their private quarters in the diplomatic sector, the human team gathered around a holographic display of the council chamber. "They've arranged everything to reinforce the hierarchy," Dr. Warren observed, manipulating the display to highlight seating patterns. "Species are literally positioned according to their perceived value to the council. The center seats belong to the founding members, with successive rings representing later joiners, and us. We're literally outside the circles entirely. Social architecture as power reinforcement," agreed cultural specialist Dr. Nadia Okafor, who had remained silent throughout the day's proceedings, watching everything. "The physical space trains everyone to know their place. Innovation flows inward, while compliance and admiration are expected to flow outward." Maya paced the room, processing. "And what have we learned about these advanced species today?" Lieutenant Yoshida brought up her tactical assessment. "The Archeans have unmatched technological capabilities, but severe limits in adaptability. Their crystalline biology allows for remarkable feats of engineering, but makes them pathologically risk-averse. They haven't fundamentally changed their approach to problem-solving in over 10,000 years. The Vesperi hive mind allows for complex calculations and perfect coordination," continued Officer Patel, "but they struggle with novel situations that haven't been encountered by any part of their collective. Their innovation comes from scale, not creativity." Dr. Okafor nodded. "And the Quarians leverage their extended lifespans, averaging 7 centuries, to accumulate vast knowledge, but their longevity has made them pathologically patient. They'll debate a solution for decades rather than risk an imperfect implementation." Maya stopped pacing and gazed at the holographic representation of the council chamber. "They've all evolved toward specialization, optimizing for their particular evolutionary advantages. But specialization creates blind spots," finished Dr. Warren. "Exactly what we predicted." Maya's hand passed through the hologram, disrupting the perfect order of the council arrangement. "Humanity never had the luxury of specialization. Earth forced us to adapt constantly. Ice ages, predators, plagues, our own capacity for conflict. We survived because we remained generalists." She turned to face her team, eyes bright with purpose. "They've placed us in the back because they think we're insignificant. But from here, we can see patterns they can't. We can make connections they won't. And when the moment comes, and it will come, they'll understand why being underestimated is humanity's greatest advantage." Lieutenant Yoshida raised an eyebrow. "And until then," Maya smiled, "we watch, We learn, we prepare, and we let them keep laughing at the humans sitting quietly in the back. Maya studied the data patterns the Thraxian delegates had shared. Their translucent tentacles had trembled slightly as they transferred the information, a sign of genuine concern among their species. Now, alone in her office, she compared the anomalous readings against historical Earth defense patterns. A chime at her door interrupted her concentration. "Enter," she called. Dr. Warren stepped inside, his normally composed face showing rare excitement. "Captain, I've completed cross-referencing the anomaly with our archives. The pattern similarities are striking." He projected a holographic comparison between the Sector 7 anomaly and historical Earth data. "This sequence here matches electromagnetic disruption patterns from the orbital defense crisis of 2189, and these energy spikes mirrored what we saw during the AI containment incidents of the early 2200s. Maya leaned forward, eyes narrowing. The Council's specialists dismissed it as background radiation. The HFY Science Directorate officially classified it as standard quantum fluctuations inherent to that sector's unique spacetime properties, Warren quoted. "Their analysis was mathematically perfect according to their understanding of physics." "But incomplete," Maya murmured. "Precisely." Warren highlighted specific data points. "They're analyzing it through their specialized frameworks. The Arctians see it through quantum mechanics. The Vesperi Collective interprets it as consciousness pattern disturbances. The Quarians match it against historical records. None of them are connecting the dots between disciplines," Maya concluded. A second chime announced Lieutenant Yoshida's arrival. "Security sweep complete, Captain. Our quarters remain unmonitored, though I detected 3 separate attempts to establish passive surveillance in the past 12 hours. Maya nodded. "Expected. They're curious about the newcomers." "There's more," Yoshida continued. "I've been mapping Council emergency protocols through public terminal access. Their response systems are highly specialized but show minimal cross-species integration. In a genuine crisis, their chains of command would fragment along evolutionary lines." Communications Officer Patel entered next, completing the inner circle. "You'll want to see this, Captain. I've been monitoring communication patterns across the station." She displayed a network diagram showing message frequency between different species representatives. "Notice anything?" Maya studied the visualization. Information silos, heavy communication within species groups, minimal exchange between them except through formal channels. "Exactly," Patel confirmed. "Despite centuries of cooperation, they still don't really talk to each other. The Council structure actually reinforces isolation while creating the illusion of unity." Dr. Okafor joined them last, carrying an ancient-looking paper notebook, a deliberate choice for information she wanted kept off any network. "My cultural analysis is complete. Each major species operates from a position of evolutionary exceptionalism. They believe their particular adaptation represents the optimal path of development." "Classic convergent evolution fallacy," Warren commented. "More than that," Okafor continued. "It's become theological for some species. The Arctians believe their crystalline forms represent universal perfection. The Vesperi see individual consciousness as a developmental phase before true collective awareness. The Quarians interpret their longevity as evidence of evolutionary superiority." Maya absorbed this information silently, then stood and walked to the window overlooking the vast station complex. Stars glittered beyond, uncountable and indifferent. "So we have an approaching anomaly that matches patterns from Earth's defense crisis archives," she summarized. "We have advanced species each analyzing it through their specialized lenses. We have a council structure that reinforces isolation rather than integration. And we have deeply held beliefs about evolutionary superiority preventing true collaboration." She turned back to her team. "This is exactly the scenario Earth Central anticipated when they selected us for this mission." Lieutenant Yoshida frowned slightly. "You believe this is a genuine threat?" "Whether it's a threat or not, it's an opportunity," Maya replied. "Humanity has been asking itself for generations, What unique value do we bring to an interstellar community? What's our role among species with vastly superior technologies and specialized evolutionary advantages? She gestured to the data displays surrounding them. Now we have our answer. In a galaxy of specialists, humanity's value is synthesis, our ability to connect disparate fields, to see patterns others miss, to adapt rapidly to changing circumstances. Dr. Warren nodded slowly. And to do that effectively, we needed to be underestimated. Maya finished. We needed to be placed where no one would watch us too closely. We needed to be. In the back of the room, Paddle said with a small smile, where we can see everything. Maya fought to maintain her measured pace as she entered the council's emergency session. Around her, pandemonium had replaced the usual orderly proceedings. The massive chamber, typically a model of diplomatic decorum, now resembled the aftermath of an earthquake. Delegates clustered in frantic groups, voices raised in dozens of languages. The central display showed the spreading darkness. 3 entire sectors had gone silent, their communication networks completely severed. Nearly 30 billion sentient beings now isolated from the galactic community. Chancellor Zix struggled to maintain order from the central platform, her normally commanding presence diminished by the crisis. Her voice strained above the chaos. The Arxian Science Directorate will present their analysis first, followed by analysis, interrupted a Thraxian delegate, mandibles clicking rapidly in agitation. While you analyze, my homeworld prepares for isolation. The disruption pattern will reach us within 14 cycles. Maya took her seat at the back of the chamber, where Dr. Warren waited with their prepared response protocols. Officer Patel slipped in beside them, her expression grim. 17 more systems have reported preliminary communication disruptions, Patel whispered. The pattern is accelerating exactly as we predicted. On the central platform, an Arxian representative, a crystalline being whose facets glowed with internal light, presented a complex quantum model of the anomaly. The mathematical elegance of their analysis drew appreciative murmurs from the scientifically minded delegates, but Maya noted the practical limitations immediately. Their model is theoretically perfect, Dr. Warren commented softly, but assumes technology will respond according to standard quantum principles, which we know isn't happening, Maya replied. The Vesperi collective representative followed, 12 identical beings moving in perfect synchronization as they presented their hive minds analysis. The disruption pattern suggests a form of distributed consciousness targeting our communication networks. We propose establishing psychic emergency channels using our collective talents. Maya watched the Quarian Elder Council representative physically recoil at the suggestion. The ancient species had a deep historical distrust of psychic integration methods. Unacceptable, the Quarian announced. We have archives of similar disruptions from the Second Galactic Expansion. Traditional subspace harmonics proved effective then, and will serve now. Hour after hour passed as species proposed increasingly desperate solutions, each failing to gain consensus. Maya observed it all from her distant seat, noting how each approach reflected the evolutionary strengths and limitations of its proposers. Lieutenant Yoshida returned from her information-gathering circuit of the chamber's perimeter. Panic is spreading beyond the council, she reported quietly. The commercial sectors are preparing for evacuation. 3 minor species delegations have already departed for their homeworlds. Maya checked the chronometer. How long until Earth receives our data packet? Another 4 hours minimum, Yoshida replied. And their response would take equally long to return. We can't wait for instructions, Maya decided. The pattern will have consumed 5 more sectors by then. She studied the chamber, watching the desperate diplomatic dance unfolding before her. The advanced species, so certain of their superiority, so specialized in their thinking, were failing to find common ground even as the crisis worsened. It's time, she said finally. Her team looked at her with the same mixture of anticipation and concern. They had prepared for this moment, but the stakes were impossibly high. One wrong move and humanity's voice might be permanently dismissed from galactic affairs. The Council needs what only we can provide, Maya continued. But they don't know it yet. They need synthesis. They need adaptation. They need the perspective that comes from sitting in the back and seeing the whole room. Dr. Warren nodded. We're ready, Captain. Maya took a deep breath and stood. At first, no one noticed the human representative rising from her distant seat. Gradually, however, a ripple of awareness spread through the chamber as delegates nudged their neighbors and pointed toward the back. Chancellor Zix noticed last, her eye stalks swiveling in surprise to find the source of the sudden quiet. Her voice carried a note of confusion as she acknowledged the unexpected interruption. The Council recognizes Representative Chen of Earth, she announced. The traditional, formal phrasing strangely emphasized by the circumstances. Every eye, optical sensor, and sensory apparatus in the massive chamber turned toward Maya. In the sudden silence, her footsteps echoed as she walked forward, no longer content to remain in the back. Honorable delegates, Maya began, her voice clear and steady. What you face is not a unique phenomenon. We've seen this before. The Council chamber fell into a stunned silence as Maya walked confidently to the central platform. The transition from ignored observer to focal point was jarring for many delegates. Several exchanged skeptical glances, but the growing crisis had created a desperation that overshadowed their prejudice. What you're facing, Maya continued, is not random. It bears all the signatures of an automated defense system, specifically one designed to neutralize advanced communication networks that match certain technological patterns. She gestured to Dr. Warren, who transmitted complex data patterns to the central display. The chamber's holographic system rendered the information in vivid detail, overlapping waveforms, signal degradation patterns, and spreading disruption visualized in 3 dimensions. This matches quantum signature disruptions from Earth's history, Maya explained. During our development of interplanetary communication, we encountered similar cascading failures. What you're experiencing is essentially a technological immune response. The Arxian representative's crystalline structure flickered with skepticism. Your species barely achieved interstellar flight a century ago. How could you possibly have encountered technology that predates our earliest records? Maya smiled slightly. We didn't create it. We stumbled into it. Earth's solar system contained remnants of ancient defense systems left by precursor civilizations. Rather than avoiding them, we studied them. Rather than specializing our technology to bypass them, we diversified our approaches. Lieutenant Yoshida stepped forward, activating a secondary display showing Earth's communication evolution. Human communication technology developed through multiple parallel paths: quantum entanglement, subspace transmission, gravitational wave modulation, and even modified versions of primitive radio. When one system failed, we adapted rather than optimizing a single approach. The Vesperi collective representative moved forward, their synchronized movements betraying agitation. Your suggestion is inefficient. Optimized systems always outperform diversified ones. In stable environments, yes, Maya acknowledged. But this is not a stable environment. The anomaly specifically targets optimized systems. The more advanced and specialized, the more vulnerable they become. Dr. Okafor joined Maya on the platform, bringing up cultural and historical records. Throughout human history, our greatest achievements often came not from specialization, but from cross-disciplinary thinking. The anomaly you face requires exactly this approach, combining elements from multiple species technologies in ways their creators never intended. Maya watched understanding slowly dawn across the diverse faces of the Council. Some showed resistance, others curiosity. A few displayed dawning comprehension. Chancellor Zix's appendages arranged themselves in a formal pattern of consideration. You propose that less advanced technology might be more effective against this threat. Not less advanced, Maya corrected. Differently advanced. Adaptively advanced. We need to combine Arxian quantum crystallography with Vesperi distributed consciousness algorithms, implemented through modified Thraxian energy systems, all coordinated through human-designed interfaces. She paused, letting the audacity of the proposal sink in. We need to stop thinking as separate species with specialized evolutionary advantages and start thinking as a unified galactic community with diverse perspectives. The chamber erupted in objections. Technical impossibilities, biological incompatibilities, and historical rivalries were all raised as barriers. Maya waited patiently as the outburst ran its course. Every concern you've raised is valid, she acknowledged when silence finally returned. If we had months or years, we would address each one methodically. But the anomaly will reach the Council homeworlds within days. We don't have time for perfection. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of key representatives. Humanity learned this lesson through bitter experience. Sometimes the theoretically optimal solution must give way to the practical solution that actually works. Chancellor Zix's voice cut through the tension. What specifically do you propose, Representative Chen? Maya nodded to Dr. Warren, who activated their prepared briefing. A detailed implementation plan appeared on all delegate displays. Integration protocols, technical specifications, and deployment strategies. We've prepared a comprehensive approach, Maya explained. It requires immediate cooperation between 17 species, technical resources from 22 systems, and a complete suspension of standard council hierarchies during implementation. The Quarian elder's ancient voice carried heavy skepticism. You developed this response in mere days while our finest minds have found no solution. Maya smiled slightly. Sometimes the back of the room offers the clearest view of the entire problem. We've been watching, learning, and preparing since we arrived. She gestured to the spreading darkness on the galactic display. The question now is simple. Will you trust the perspective of those you placed in the back, or will you maintain the hierarchy as your worlds go dark? The modified human vessel, Adaptable, hung in space at the edge of the expanding anomaly, looking almost primitive compared to the sleek alien ships surrounding it. Its hull was a patchwork of technologies. Archean crystal matrices interfaced with Thraxian energy conduits, Vesperi consciousness amplifiers mounted alongside human analog systems. Inside the command center, Maya watched as the advanced ships of the combined Council fleet began reporting system failures one by one. Archean flagship Crystalline Harmony reports complete navigation failure, announced Officer Petal from her communication station. Vesperi collective vessel, Mind of Many, has lost propulsion control, added Lieutenant Yoshida. Their hive link is experiencing cascade disruption. Maya nodded grimly. Status of our systems. Chief Engineer Rodriguez's hands flew across controls that would have bewildered most Council engineers. A hybrid interface combining touchscreens, mechanical toggles, holographic projections, and even hardwired analog backups. Primary quantum systems failing exactly as predicted, Rodriguez reported. Switching to secondary gravitational arrays. Now compensating. We're holding steady, Captain. The ship shuddered as invisible forces battered against it, but unlike the advanced alien vessels, the Adaptable maintained function. Incoming communication from the Quarian command vessel, Patel announced. Admiral Genta wishes to know how we're still operational. Maya activated the channel. The ancient Quarian admiral's face appeared on screen, his age rings darkened with stress. Representative Chen, every vessel in the fleet is experiencing critical failures, yet your unconventional ship remains functional. Explain. Redundancy, Admiral, Maya replied. Inefficiency. Backup systems for our backup systems. All the design elements that advanced civilizations engineered out of their technology, we kept. She nodded to Rodriguez, who triggered a ship-wide status display. Our primary systems are failing just like yours, but we expected that. What's keeping us operational are the secondary and tertiary systems, the evolutionary dead ends, the outdated approaches, the paths your civilizations abandoned in favor of optimization. The Admiral's eyes widened slightly in understanding. You intentionally built an inefficient vessel. We built an adaptable one. Maya corrected. Evolution isn't always about optimization. Sometimes it's about maintaining adaptability in the face of unpredictable challenges. As they spoke, the adaptable penetrated deeper into the anomaly. The ship's unusual hybrid sensors began gathering unprecedented data about the phenomenon. "Captain," Dr. Warren called from the science station, "I'm detecting a distinct pattern within the disruption field. It's not just blocking communications, it's scanning, analyzing, and targeting specific technological signatures." Maya joined him, studying the complex data streams. "It's an automated quarantine system," she realized, designed to neutralize specific advancement patterns that its creators deemed threatening. Warren nodded. "And our technology doesn't match any pattern it recognizes," Maya finished. "We're the technological equivalent of evolutionary platypuses, too strange to fit into its classification systems." She turned to Lieutenant Yoshida. "How many council vessels can we support with emergency power and communications relays?" Yoshida calculated quickly. 7, maybe 8 of the smaller ships, not the capital vessels. "Prioritize ships with complementary capabilities," Maya ordered. "We need diverse functionality, not raw power." As the adaptable extended emergency connections to selected council vessels, Maya returned to the command channel where Admiral Genta waited with the other fleet commanders. "We've identified the anomaly as an ancient automated quarantine system," she reported. "It's specifically targeting advanced technology that follows predictable development patterns." The Arxian commander's crystalline face showed rare emotion. "Impossible. All advanced civilizations follow similar optimization curves. Technology convergence is an inevitable outcome of progress." "That's exactly the assumption that makes your ships vulnerable," Maya explained. "This system was designed to contain civilizations that develop along predictable paths. Humanity's chaotic, diversified approach to technology, which your council found so primitive, is precisely what allows us to function where you cannot." She brought up a tactical display showing the adaptable's position relative to what they now identified as the anomaly's central processing node. "We can reach the control node," Maya continued, "but we'll need coordinated support from specific council vessels using modified protocols. Our ship alone can't neutralize the system, but together, combining human adaptability with your specialized capabilities, we have a chance." Admiral Genta's ancient eyes studied Maya for a long moment. "In 7 centuries of service, I have never taken tactical direction from a species barely a century into interstellar travel." The command channel fell silent as the fleet commanders waited for his decision. Maya held his gaze steadily. Finally, the Admiral's age rings lightened, a sign of acceptance among Quarians. "Yet in those 7 centuries, I have learned to recognize when traditional hierarchies must yield to practical necessities. The council vessels are at your disposal, Representative Chen. Coordinate your attack." Maya nodded respectfully. "Not an attack, Admiral. An adaptation." As she turned to implement their plan, Rodriguez caught her eye from across the bridge. "They're finally getting it, aren't they?" he said quietly. "Why being underestimated is sometimes the greatest advantage." Maya smiled slightly. "They're learning what humanity has always known. Sometimes the view from the back of the room is exactly what you need to solve the problem no one else can see." The Council Emergency Command Center aboard the station had been transformed. Where once ornate hierarchy had dictated positioning, now species mixed freely in functional groups. Maya moved between workstations where her human team coordinated with specialists from 27 different civilizations. "The adaptive shielding protocols are holding," reported Dr. Warren, working alongside an Arxian crystallographer whose facets glowed with rare respect. "We've restored communications to the Nelvarian and Thraxian home systems." Across the room, Lieutenant Yoshida guided representatives through defensive reconfigurations. "You're thinking too linearly," she explained to a frustrated Vesperi coordinator. "The anomaly expects optimization. We need to introduce deliberate inefficiencies, functional chaos. Your approach defies all established principles of technological development," complained the Vesperi, their synchronized movements revealing deep discomfort. Exactly, Yoshida replied with a slight smile. That's precisely why it works. At the central tactical display, Maya studied the progress of their modified fleet. 8 ships, each combining human adaptive systems with specialized alien technology, had penetrated deep into the anomaly. Data streams showed they were approaching the central node that controlled the ancient defense system. Remarkable, said a voice beside her. Maya turned to find the eldest Quarian council member studying the display. His age rings, indicating nearly 9 centuries of life, had taken on a pearlescent sheen that signified deep contemplation. Your solution shouldn't work, he continued. It violates every principle of technological advancement we followed for millennia. That's exactly why it does work, Maya explained. The anomaly was designed to counter technologies that follow predictable advancement patterns. By combining approaches that would never naturally evolve together, we've created something it cannot recognize or counter. The ancient being's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. A gesture Maya had learned indicated profound reassessment. In all my centuries, he admitted, I never considered that advancement might sometimes require stepping backward to move forward. Not backward, Maya corrected gently. Sideways. Differently. Evolution isn't a ladder. It's a branching tree of possibilities. Specialization is powerful, but creates vulnerabilities. Adaptability preserves options. She gestured to the surrounding command center, where species that had barely acknowledged each other now worked in seamless coordination. Look around you. The Council has existed for thousands of years, yet how often have you seen true collaboration across evolutionary lines? Not cooperation, actual integration of perspectives. The elder Quarian observed the scene with new awareness. Rarely, he admitted. Our protocols encourage formal exchange, but not this. This is humanity's contribution, Maya said quietly. Not superior technology or lifespans, but the ability to connect disparate approaches, to see patterns across specialized domains, to adapt rather than optimize. An urgent alert sounded from the communication station. Officer Patel looked up with excitement. Captain, the fleet has reached the central node. They're initiating the countermeasure protocols. All activity in the command center paused as attention focused on the main display. The tactical feed showed the combined fleet surrounding a massive structure hidden deep within the anomaly. An ancient automated control system that had lain dormant for millennia until triggered by the Council's advanced communication networks. Countermeasure initiating, announced the Arxian commander leading the fleet, implementing human adaptive protocols. Encountering resistance, systems struggling to maintain coherence. Maya watched tensely as the ships deployed their hybrid solution, a combination of technologies from 7 different species, coordinated through human-designed interfaces that deliberately introduced controlled variability. It's not working, muttered Rodriguez from his engineering station. The node is adapting to counter our approach. Maya studied the data patterns, mind racing. Something was missing. They needed an unexpected element the ancient system couldn't anticipate. A young human engineer at the auxiliary station suddenly called out, Captain, what if we use the node's own energy signature against it? If we reconfigure our emitters to mirror its outputs, but with a phase variance of 0.17, we could create a feedback loop in its recognition systems. The Council specialists turned toward the junior engineer with expressions ranging from skepticism to confusion. The solution was so elegantly simple, so fundamentally basic compared to their advanced approaches, that many couldn't grasp its potential. But Maya immediately recognized the brilliance of it. That's it. Lieutenant Yoshida, relay the reconfiguration instructions to the fleet. All ships to implement the feedback loop protocol immediately. As the new approach deployed, the tactical display showed immediate results. The ancient node's energy patterns began destabilizing as it encountered its own signature, reflected back with subtle, unpredictable variations. It's working, exclaimed the Thraxian representative. The defensive grid is collapsing. Throughout the command center, Specialists from dozens of species watched in astonishment as the elegantly simple solution, proposed by the most junior member of the human team, unraveled what their most sophisticated approaches could not defeat. The elder Quarian turned to Maya, his age rings now glowing with an emotion rarely seen in the ancient species, humility mixed with profound respect. "We placed you in the back," he said softly, "believing you had the least to contribute. We fail to understand that sometimes the most valuable perspective comes from those who can see the entire room." Maya smiled. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most advanced ones. They're the ones that look at the problem differently. Around them, as the ancient defense system collapsed and communications restored throughout council space, representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations looked at their human colleagues with new eyes, no longer seeing primitive newcomers to be tolerated, but essential partners who brought a unique and invaluable perspective to the galactic community. 6 months later, Maya paused at the entrance to the council chamber, momentarily disoriented by the transformation. The familiar hierarchical arrangement of seating had vanished entirely. In its place, a new configuration spread before her, integrated clusters where representatives from different evolutionary backgrounds sat side by side, organized by function rather than status. Captain Chen, called Chancellor Zix, her tentacular appendages arranged in the formal pattern of highest respect. "Please join us. Your team's seats await, not as observers, but as full council members." Maya exchanged glances with Dr. Warren and Lieutenant Yoshida as they followed the Chancellor through the chamber. Around them, delegates from previously aloof species nodded in recognition or performed their species equivalents of respectful greetings. They were led not to the back of the room but to a prominent position near the center. Maya noted that their neighbors included representatives from both ancient and emerging civilizations, a Quarian elder, a Thraxian scientist, and a representative from a newly contacted species even younger to interstellar travel than humanity. "Before we begin today's session," announced Chancellor Zix once all delegates were seated, "I wish to formally recognize the 6-month anniversary of what is now called the Synthesis Protocol, the unprecedented cooperative response that saved our communication networks and, quite possibly, the Council itself." Her eye stalks swept the chamber. "This new chamber arrangement is more than symbolic. It represents a fundamental reassessment of how we function as a galactic community." The Chancellor's appendages shifted to a philosophical configuration. "For millennia, we seated ourselves according to technological achievement and historical longevity, creating a hierarchy that reinforced our biases and limited our perspectives. We relegated humans to the back, believing them least valuable to our discussions." She gestured toward Maya and her team. "In doing so, we failed to recognize that their position granted them the widest perspective. They could see patterns we missed precisely because they weren't specialists." As the Chancellor continued her address, Dr. Okafor leaned toward Maya. "The cultural shift has been remarkable," she whispered. "I've documented 67 instances of cross-species research initiatives in just the past month, more than the previous decade combined." Maya nodded, watching as the first agenda item was introduced using the new protocol. Each proposal now required input from multiple evolutionary perspectives before consideration. What once would have been presented solely by the Orcsian Science Directorate now included contributions from 5 different species, including a junior human researcher. "The integration metrics are fascinating," Dr. Warren commented quietly, sliding a data tablet toward Maya. "Problem-solving efficiency has increased 47% with diverse input groups. Even more remarkably, implementation success rates have risen by 62%. Because theory finally meets practical application," Maya replied. "Specialized knowledge tempered by adaptable thinking." As the session proceeded, Maya observed the transformation in action. Species that once barely acknowledged one another now engaged in animated collaboration. Technical solutions incorporated multiple evolutionary perspectives. Diplomatic approaches considered diverse cultural frameworks. Representative Chen, called the Quarian Elder, who would become an unexpected ally. Would you share humanity's perspective on the proposed exploration protocols? Maya stood, still somewhat surprised to be called upon so prominently. 6 months ago, human input would have been an afterthought, if considered at all. The proposal's technical specifications are sound, she began, but I suggest we incorporate adaptive assessment cycles rather than fixed evaluation periods. Our experience shows that exploration encounters variables we cannot predict. Flexibility in our protocols will serve us better than rigid optimization. The Quarian nodded appreciatively. Once again, humanity reminds us to value adaptability alongside efficiency. The amendment is endorsed. Later, as the session concluded, Maya remained in her seat, watching the delegates mingle in ways that would have been unthinkable before the crisis. Lieutenant Yoshida joined her, observing the scene with quiet satisfaction. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when we first arrived?" Yoshida asked, when they laughed at the humans sitting in the back. Maya smiled. Earth Central had theories about our potential role in the galactic community, but even they couldn't have predicted this degree of transformation. She gestured toward a group where Arxian, Vesperi, and human scientists were engaged in animated discussion, their natural hierarchical tendencies giving way to genuine collaboration. They thought we had nothing to offer because we lacked their specialized advantages. Maya continued. They didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength is our adaptability, our ability to connect disciplines, to see patterns across domains, to constantly reinvent our approaches. And now, prompted Yoshida. Now they understand the paradox, Maya replied. By placing us in the back, they gave us the perfect vantage point to observe, learn, and synthesize, to see the whole room when they could only see their specialized portions of it. Chancellor Zix approached, interrupting their conversation. Captain Chen, the Council Leadership Committee has unanimously approved the synthesis protocol as permanent Council procedure. All future initiatives will incorporate multiple evolutionary perspectives and adaptive assessment methodology. She extended a formal data crystal, the highest form of recognition in Council tradition. Moreover, humanity has been invited to lead the new Interspecies Integration Commission. Your unique perspective has proven invaluable. Maya accepted the crystal with appropriate ceremony, noting the irony with private amusement. The Council honors us, Chancellor. We look forward to continuing our contribution from our new position. Not a new position, Captain Chen, corrected the Chancellor, her appendages forming a pattern Maya had never seen before, one that conveyed profound understanding. Simply a recognition of the position you always held. Sometimes the most important view comes from those who can see the entire picture. As they left the chamber, Officer Patel caught up with them, excitement evident in her expression. Captain, you won't believe this. 17 species have requested human advisors for their research divisions. They're specifically asking for our integrative perspective. Maya smiled as they walked through the corridors of the station that had once seemed so intimidating. Around them, representatives of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations now nodded in respectful acknowledgement where once they had barely noticed the human presence. It turns out, she said quietly to her team, that sitting in the back was the best seat in the house all along. Dr. Warren chuckled. Perhaps we should thank them for underestimating us. No need, Maya replied, watching as the diverse species of the Council intermingled with new appreciation for their differences. The best thanks is seeing what we've helped create. A genuinely integrated galactic community where every perspective is valued. She paused, looking back at the chamber where humanity had once been an afterthought and was now an essential voice. Sometimes being laughed at gives you exactly the freedom you need to change everything.